Whereas you first off looking at like at A&M, their offense, how dynamic is their quarterback Marcel Reed? How much or how difficult does he make things for you guys with the ability to move in the pocket and escape the pocket?
Yeah, I think he's very talented. He's a guy, every situation you have to count him in. Early in the down, the run game, later in the down, his ability to escape the pocket, his ability to extend the play. He does a really good job of moving the pocket, still seeing downfield and finding guys that have adjusted their routes or opened windows. But as a playmaker, you can see it in the LSU game. You can see it in other games as they get into different run schemes and different ways to attack the defense. His ability to extend plays and force the +1 count in that system, he does a very good job with that.
Corey, Coach Chris Fulton said a little bit that he feels strongly that Keontae Scott will be able to get back this week. Just if he is able to play, how much of a boost does that give the defense?
Yeah, I think you get Key back. That it definitely helps. But I think our guys have done a very good job. I think guys have stepped up in different situations, in different games, in different packages, and I'm excited about the growth and development that our guys have had. And obviously, you get a guy back like that's a huge boost in all areas. But we're continuing to push our guys and continue to work that development every day in practice. And I think that's been the major push for us the last couple of weeks is continuing our development and tackling and block destruction, our communication, and getting everyone on the defense to improve there as we go.
Is it a broader question, kind of what you were saying there about the growth? There was so much an emphasis on this defense improving and getting to this level when you arrived. When did you notice or when did you realize that this defense can be as good as it's become and be a college football playoff type defense that can win games for you?
Yeah, I think we're always pushing to get better every single day. And it's, the number one thing in the spring was, okay, identify the areas that we need to get better. And everything for us was just the base technique, the base fundamentals. And then it became, we need to make sure all 11 guys are working together better. It was our communication. And, I think we're never going to be satisfied. It's always, every day we got to get better. And it's in every aspect. It's, our tackling in Virginia Tech, we need to get better there. Our communication, maybe in some of those earlier games, we need to get better there. Our fundamentals, our eye discipline. So every day, that's the number one thing we push, and that's the number one thing we're handling in meetings and on the field is trying to elevate, the standard and trying to make sure we're getting better with our fundamentals, our technique, our communication, all 11 guys playing together, our swarm, how physical we play on defense. And, it's, every day tomorrow it's got to be better than it was today. Today's got to be better than it was yesterday, and we got to continue to build on that every day.
To your point, though, at what point do you think there was that buy-in? Whenever a new coach comes in, I'm sure it takes a while for the players to get that full buy-in. Where did you sense, okay, these guys see what I want? Some of the things you just identified that they can be productive on the field.
I think when the players took ownership, I think we had guys step up as leaders. Keem Mesidor and different players, Key and different guys came in, and you watch the way Ruben Bain practices, and that was a guy every day I could show. Watch this guy put his foot in the ground and run to the ball. Watch the details that this guy practices with. It was Mesidor pulling teammates up with him. It was guys deciding, this is exactly what it's going to be here. Really in all three phases of the team. But defensively, there were different guys that stepped up and pulled their teammates up with them. And I think when it became more player-led, it was teammates getting on top of each other, not just a coach. I think that's what really helped change exactly, the way that we ran to the ball, how physical we played, how we communicated as a defense. And, that's going to continue to be what it is. It's going to be the players, constantly working together, communicating together, running to the ball together, trying to out-physical the other team. And, it's different guys in every position groups, and it's been different guys at all three levels. But, Mez was the first guy that I thought really stepped up. And then, there's always been examples of guys, Bain was one of the first ones. I needed a physical rep, go watch him, or go watch Armando Blunt, or, there's different guys. Watch certain guys, how they run to the ball every single play. And I think that's pulled everyone else up because that set the standard. And now there was a path, and there was on video, okay, that's what it looks like. That's what I need it to be. And I think our coaching staff has done a really good job of holding our guys to that standard every single day at all different position groups. Making sure, hey, this is what it looks like. We need our position group to look like this every day in practice, and it's carried over to the field.
How do you like you guys match up with their wide receivers, especially Mario Craver and Casey Concepcion?
Yeah, they do a really good job. And they get those guys the ball on RPOs, on screens, out in space. They try to ID one-on-ones and try to get you in certain coverages. And, I think our guys match up well, but I think, we got to win our one-on-ones. They're very talented. They, even on special teams, you watch the way, those guys change the game in those different areas. We got to make sure technique, we're very sound. We got to change up some pitchers and do some different things, but they get some very talented guys in the perimeter.
And their offensive line, what stands out about them?
Yeah, I think they're a physical football team. I think the way their offensive line blocks, they're very athletic. You can see that the way they run the stretch play and pullers. I think they're physical at the point of attack. I think their tight ends block very well. They add different guys into the core to get the extra hat in the run game. But they run the ball for almost 200 yards a game. Very few teams have had success shutting down the run game, and I think that gets the quarterback going. It gets him on track and gives them short situations on third down, and then all of a sudden the backs break a tackle, and now that's where they've had so many explosives this year. They have a lot of plays over 10 yards. They have a lot of explosives, big plays in their drives, and that's what we got to do a really good job being physical at the point of attack. We got to win on the line of scrimmage, and that's one place that they've had a lot of success all year. I think South Carolina is the one game where they didn't run for 100 yards. So we have to attack the line of scrimmage all game.
Corey, what stands out the most to you about what Jacoby Thomas has brought to the defense this year?
His position versatility. I think one thing that was huge is, he's played a lot of college football, and he had played different positions at his previous schools. And then, I think one thing that was huge was the defense coming together, and, guys that had played here, guys that had transferred in maybe last year or 2 years ago, freshmen that have stepped up, but the locker room coming together and accepting Fitz, who was, in high school in the spring, Jacoby, who, wasn't on the roster for spring football, different guys stepping up, and, and then now having a lot of accumulated reps, at previous stops. I think that was, now you had a guy that understood situational football. You had a guy that had been in different spots before, and he's learned from them. And now he he came in, he took the playbook, and he learned very quickly there. And, he played well with his teammates, understanding how to work with ZP, how to work with Fitz, how to work with the corners, how to work with the linebackers. And, I think that's a guy that's, he constantly helps elevate the defense every week. His physical style of play, how fast he plays, he communicates better every single week. And I think as the season's gone on, you've seen him play faster and faster in different situations, sometimes in different positions. And, that's one thing that really helped the defense step up throughout the season.
Ruben Bain's obviously clearly very intrinsically motivated, but have you seen him just over the course of the year? Like, you see the stereotypical, bulletin board material, people maybe talking down about him. Do you see him get extra motivated by that? Does anything that affect him in any way?
I think he's a guy, it could be April 15th, and it's the third practice of spring ball, and it's, this weekend. I think he works the same. He has a plan, he goes through his notes, he attacks practice. Like, if you watch him practice, last Thursday or this Saturday, like, they run a screen, he puts his foot in the ground, break foot, drive foot, straight line, through the hip. It looked like a game run. And, that's how he goes about it every single day, and I think that's why he is the player that he is. He's constantly working on, his technique. He's constantly working on his get off or his pad level or his hand placement, constantly working on pass rush. And, one thing about him is he's a complete player because he plays the run. He does a really good job at the line of scrimmage, stopping the run, does a really good job of using technique and doing his job every play, which sometimes that's occupying a combo or taking on a double team or setting the edge and allowing someone else to make the tackle. And that's where he's such a great player in this defense, because, you always know he's going to be exactly where he's supposed to be, doing his job, 100 miles an hour, physical. But that's, I think you take everything else out of it, it's going to be the same thing on Tuesday practice film that you're going to see on a Saturday game film.
This extra time to prepare for this game, did it provide time to go back and self-evaluate way teams have attacked you since your last bye week? Because that was now a long time ago too.
Yeah, it's definitely been good to go back through the season and, our tendencies, what have we shown, different things that we need to, maybe we've gone through too many times, or different things that you can anticipate we're going to be in certain situations, how different teams have attacked us both, in the run game, in the pass game, route-wise and protectionally, different things that we need to clean up, whether it's certain areas of tackling, block destruction, setting the edge, more ways to try to take the ball away. But every aspect we've kind of gone through and, okay, how do we clean this up? Okay, what's maybe another answer in this situation? How do we, have another call or another answer, and also not trying to do too much. Our guys are very comfortable playing fast the way that we do it within the structure and within the system, and got to continue to keep the confidence high and play fast within our structure and our defense. But no, it's been very similar to a bye week early in the season where we go through and the first thing we evaluate is ourselves. Okay, what do we need to get fixed? What are areas that we need to clean up? And then, go into a little bit more film on A&M. What are they doing? How are they attacking people? Where are their strengths? And, how do we take that away?
Awesome.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, I have a question. Just we have signing day, kind of looking back, is there a general theme with the guys you guys signed on defense and your first year here, kind of really gearing towards what you want to do? Is there anything you kind of say about this class you got?
Yeah, I think we're really excited about it. I think, first, it's keeping a lot of guys home in the state of Florida. Really excited about the guys that stayed home that chose to be here at the University of Miami. And then I think, the speed and the length that we have. I think up front on the defensive line, I think we signed some players that I think are going to be very good difference makers. And you never know where it is in the class. Some guys possibly this year, some guys down the line. At corner, some guys that can cover, some guys that are rangy in the back end at safety, and then linebackers that can run, can rush. But really all three levels, we're really excited about the class and guys that love football. That's one thing that stood out to us on unofficial visits or when we went and visited and when they came back down for games, guys that were constantly asking about, the game plan or what we were doing or how we were trying to coach certain things up, and guys that are constantly love football. And, you get off the field and the first text you see is about something that happened that weekend on the field. And, that's what gets us excited about, guys that love football and are going to come down and be able to get coached and continue to develop and get better, as their careers go on, whether they're a guy that's, like some of our younger guys right now playing really well at an elite level as a true freshman, or guys that, next year I think will surprise some people that are on our roster right now.
I'm doing a story on what people through their careers have learned, and you have an interesting career in that where you've come from. Is there anything you had to learn to be able to, climb the ladder, so to speak, in your career?
Well, the first thing was defense. That was a rude awakening. But no, I mean, as you go through, I've been very fortunate to work for unbelievable coaches. Coach Cristobal, different places he's been, different experiences he's had. Coach Fleck, Coach Schiano, Coach Signetti, Coach Harasimiak. I've been very lucky. A lot of the guys I've worked for, even a lot of the coordinators that I've worked for, Coach Rondo, Coach Fercucci. There's been a lot of different guys that the way that they coach, their styles, the way that they develop players, the way that they go through their progressions of fundamentals and techniques, the way that they break down film, different guys, the way that they recruit, the style they recruit, who you're looking for. And through my career, it's been, at one point this is what you want to look for or find, and then all of a sudden it was like, we want to change directions on that. There's something else I've learned or someone else that I've learned from. And I've been very lucky. Some of the guys have been in the NFL. Coach Schiano was an NFL head coach. What was he looking for at that level? Guys that have been in championship programs, won national titles, whether it's Coach Cristobal or, Coach Signetti, different coaches I've worked for. And, I'm always asking questions, why did those teams get over the top? Why'd you take those guys? Why was that guy successful? Why was that defense, as successful as it was? Or why'd you put those guys in those situations? So to me, you're always learning. And, we'll take things from this year. Like there's already things that we've tweaked this year that last year were great for this defense. And this year, maybe it didn't work as well. Or putting different players in different situations, or, different styles of play and situations. And, that's one thing we're always trying to get better than we were last year and always trying to learn. And, even this past couple of weeks, you go ahead and look at what, maybe some of the other top defenses in the country are doing right now to try to figure out what's their advantage, over their opponents every week? What do they do really well, and how does that correlate, or how does that compare to what we're doing, or things that may be similar to what we're doing? And I think every year you learn something new, and sometimes it's you gotta learn fast, and other years you have a good year, you might take only one or two things, but I feel like you're always trying to develop and grow and learn, and it's every aspect. It's on the field, it's off the field, it's in the weight room, it's in recruiting, it's every aspect of the program we're always trying to build. And I've been very lucky with the people around me, and even from our staff, we've changed a lot from what we were last year at Minnesota because of what our secondary coaches have brought in, or our defensive line coaches have brought in, or some of the people around the program, or stealing something from the offense, the way that they're attacking us in camp, or spring ball, something that Coach Dawson maybe found, or so it's like, okay, how do we evolve from that and continue to get better?
Awesome. We'll throw it over to Zoom here. Coach, when you answering this question, if you want to look up at that camera up there.
Okay.
Carter?
Yeah, we got one question from outside the room. It's from David Teal. David, go ahead.
Coach David Teal with the Virginia Pilot in Norfolk. You mentioned having worked with Coach Signetti. When you were at James Madison in 2019 through 21, could you have envisioned that program in the college football playoffs so soon?
We were just hoping to go to the FCS playoffs at that point. No, I think the structure that they have, and the support in the community, and the support from the university, I think that program's always going up. I had left for Rutgers before they went to become a G5 program, so my last experience was in the Fargo Dome at North Dakota State there. But I think the support and the way that administration's done it there, I think they've done a very good job. And excited to see what they do this weekend, and I'm pulling for those guys as they keep playing.
And then you mentioned KC Concepcion earlier. Obviously, you were elsewhere. But as Coach Cristobal or anyone else mentioned what a chore he was to defend even as a true freshman back in 2023 when he played against Miami.
Yeah, he's been a guy, watching clips earlier, him on special teams, or him changing the game through, return game, and then, the way they get him the ball in space. And I think we watched the reverse earlier from NC State that he hit against us a couple of years ago. He's a guy that, we always need to know where he is. We always got to make sure our guys are communicating what the coverage is and what the shell is, but we got to have awareness of where he is. We got to be physical. We got to constantly hit him when he does get the football, and we got to do that right from the start of the game. But he's obviously a very talented player.
Thank you.
Awesome. We'll end it there today. Thank you, Coach.
All right, thank you guys.